This is Kathy Hester. Welcome to my kitchen. I'm going live just a wee bit early to give everybody time to kind of come in and get settled so we can have a really good chat. I would love to hear from you. So if you're starting to watch this, it should be a minute or two more before people come on. Go ahead and let me know who you are, where you're from, what the weather's like. While you're doing that, I'm going to put a couple things into the comments. One of the things that I'm putting into the comments is that I have a class tomorrow. So let's get that going. Got that in the comments. And then if you are watching from a Facebook group, so if you're in a Facebook group, not a Facebook page, I'm also putting in a link to click on so that you can actually be seen. So you're not just person from Facebook, you're Jenny from Facebook or someone like that. Click to show your name in the comments that Kathy sees. Okay. All right, we got a couple things going on. Wonderful. Oh, and there's a lot of people watching. You guys are just very quiet. I thought no one was there and that I could just kind of take my time. So what I just did, for those of you who have come by, I'm Kathy Hester of plantbasedinstantpot.com, healthyslowcooking.com, two blogs that you can get lots of free vegan and plant-based recipes. I'm the author of 10 traditionally published vegan cookbooks, and I try to go live here every week. I have not been good. February has been a weird month for me. How has it been for you guys? And I still see a lot of people there, but I don't see any comments yet. So I would love it if you would comment and tell me how things are going. And I've got everything open because I'm seeing my comments, so that means something's right. And I'll go ahead and actually put this other comment about the classes so everybody can see that. Starting early didn't really help me much, did it? Oh, yay, I'm starting to see comments. It makes me so happy. Hello, Beth. It is wonderful to have you here from Akron, Ohio. I'm looking at all the places at the same time. Oh, and Diane is here from Cincinnati. Okay, I'm feeling much better now. Sometimes I do a thing where I can't see the comments and it's my fault. So I just wanted to see where everyone's there. And I believe it's Afshin. And if it's wrong, please correct me. You can do it phonetically, but either way, please forgive me. I'm not good with American names either. What's that air fryer real quick? I'm not sure what that question means. Like, what air fryer would I use? What air fryer recipe is fast? Need a little more information from that. And hi, it's Cindy. And Cindy says, February's been a rough month for me. Yeah, I think it's been a little dip for a lot of people. Therefore, that's why we are doing the chop and chat, which is my favorite fallback for like, oh, I don't want to make a whole recipe or whatever. It's like, I always have prep work to do. We can always talk about mushrooms and what I'm doing here, or we can talk about some other stuff. So Ashton, air fryer. Okay. And it is thinking about air fryers because you can do, one of the things we're going to do. So that's my Breville Smart Oven Air. So it's the one that's a toaster oven, but it has an air fryer function. And hello, Facebook user from upstate New York. Oh, thank you, Afshin, about the live videos. And another person, if I say Facebook user, it's because I don't see your name. I did put in the comments, though, I put two links. So the first link is where you can come and if you want to join me for my class that we're doing through Kathy's Cooking Club, we're just doing a mezz platter. So we're going to do like a vegan labna, a vegan kind of feta fig whipped feta kind of thing. We're going to do some different spreads. We're going to do some chickpea bread to sop it all up, and it's going to be really fun. But you can go to kathyhester.podia.com and either sign up for Kathy's Cooking Club or just purchase an individual class. Totally up to you. The other link that I put up in the comments that's probably up near the top is if you're watching from a Facebook group, if you click that, you can grant Restream permission to see your name, and that way I can address you by name. That's the only thing, really. Oh, Apple's here. I haven't seen you in forever. It's so good to see you. And Helen Singleton is here. Awesome. It's great to see all of you guys. So what I'm doing is, and I'm not sure if you saw, earlier this week I went to the Asian market and I did a little live on Instagram. And on Instagram, I'm Kathy Hester Cooks. So if you want to follow me there, I'm doing some short mini lives, and I'm doing lots of those reels, which are like short vertical videos. So I'm doing those on Reels and TikTok. And on TikTok, I think I'm Kathy Cooks Vegan. I can find that out. If you ask me in the questions, I'll come back and tell you. And I'm putting those shorts on YouTube, on my YouTube channel as well. And you can find me there by just looking up Kathy Hester. So what I was doing earlier this week, so I went to the Asian market just to get mushrooms, and like, look how beautiful. And actually, let me do a little overhead. Ooh. Now that's too light. Sorry about that, guys. Let's fix that up. That's a little bit better. Okay, that felt like we were out in the snow. So look how beautiful. They're huge. These are shiitake mushrooms, and they're probably the biggest, heaviest shiitake mushrooms I have ever found. They were still very reasonable. All of these are quite heavy, and usually if I had a choice to get the small ones, I'm not really going to use these big stems in the cooking, and we're going to talk about what we can do for that. And hey, Scott, and mushrooms are great for your immune system, and they're also just delicious. So I like it when things are healthy and delicious at the same time. That's just a bonus. So I do this a lot. So I like to go to the Asian market and bulk up on mushrooms. So I actually got, these were about $8 worth of shiitakes, because again, that probably weighs about as much as like 5 or 6 little shiitakes. So these are quite thick and hefty. And we're going to talk about how I'm not going to use the stems in cooking right now, and I'm going to use them for something else though. And that's not to say you can't use the stems in your cooking. It's just not going to fit what I want to do with them. So this is one way of looking at it. Oh, and Bonnie loves mushrooms and needs different ways to use them. Okay, awesome. And hey, Susan Crow, it is awesome. Diane, I did not even pay you to say that. Of course we're going to freeze them, because what would a chop and chat be without freezing things so I don't have to do it later? So that's one of the great things. So I go to the Asian market to get my mushrooms because they're much less expensive, they're fresher, and they're much less expensive. So I believe these were $8.99 a pound. This was about 1 1/4 pounds of shiitake mushrooms. I also got oyster mushrooms, and I got regular mushrooms. And so we'll see. We might prep those on a live too. Today, I just had a few minutes, so I thought we'd come in and do this. So, oh, and hello from Windsor, where the snow is completely melted. I believe that might be Linda. I think Linda lives in Windsor. And that's wonderful. And so I do freeze my mushrooms. So you could dehydrate these too. So what we're going to do, what I'm going to do, is because these stems are going to be kind of tougher because they're so big, I'm going to cut them off and reserve them. And then I might even slice them while we're doing this. I'm going to put them on this dehydrator rack and put them in the Breville and dehydrate them, maybe like little slices. What I do after that, once I have, and usually I just save them in a airtight resealable container. When it's enough, then I just grind it in my spice grinder and I have mushroom powder. Because one of the things people, you can get things like at Trader Joe's. They've got that wonderful mushroom powder blend that's super good to use, but it does have a lot of salt in it. And even if you use salt, and I have no judgments on you either way, what you choose to do, is if you have something that brings flavor and it has salt, you can only step it up till it's enough salt. And if you wanted more mushroom flavor, you're just kind of stuck. Or you can add some plain mushroom powder. I've been hearing a lot from people that some people aren't able to use nutritional yeast or some other things, and mushroom powder will bring some really good umami flavor to soups, stews, stir fries, things like that. So this is our way of getting free mushroom powders, the way I think about it. Oh, awesome. And somebody just made the dirty rice recipe. And so I'm just going to, since we're chatting, I should be chopping. So I think what I'm going to do for now is I'm actually going to just put these over to the side. So I'm going to go ahead and chop off the stems that I'm going to reserve. And I do have a wet paper towel, so if there is a little bit of dirt, these are really pretty clean, but I just use a little damp paper towel. It's not really wet, it's damp. So let me get those guys going. And so some recipes that you could use mushrooms in. Let's try that. Whew. Is today a hard day for some of you guys? Because can you see it's kind of cloudy and icky outside? It was actually sunny for like 3 days. It was almost 70 degrees. I walked around at night outside without a coat on, and it felt glorious, just glorious. So we never want to actually like put mushrooms under water or things like that, because they're just going to kind of soak it up and get waterlogged, and it's not going to be happy. That goes for if you're going to be freezing them or not. So that's what we're doing with that. So again, we're just going to lightly brush off the tops of these. And I find that the mushrooms at the Asian market are so much a better quality than other mushrooms that I find like at the grocery store. Another thing I do like to do though, and especially if you have Kroger's or something like that, sometimes they'll mark down mushrooms because they'll be in the packets. And so if you can get some of those very inexpensively, that's another good time to start putting them in the freezer. So you might come home with 4 packs of shiitake or oyster or just button mushrooms. And then you can go ahead and chop them or cut them into chunks. And I usually just freeze them in resealable bags. If you have something that, we've been trying some of the plastic bags. And I'm going to answer your question. It's just because sometimes I find it a little bit easier. I'm trying to experiment with some of those reusable plastic bags, and some of those experiments have not been up to par. And so Vanita is asking, is there a reason I'm slicing the stems off versus breaking them off? I've just always sliced them off. What happens when I break? Oh, you know, I kind of want to keep this rest of this piece of the mushroom attached to here. But honestly, you could do either one. And one of the reasons I'm doing this too is these stems, you may not be able to, like, this is seriously big for a shiitake mushroom. Can you see that? Like it's as big or bigger than my finger. So that's one of the reasons I would do that. So, and I'm cutting them off simply because all of these that are over here, I'm going to turn that into mushroom powder because they're big, thick stems. Now, if these were the only mushrooms I had and I wanted to still use all of them and not do anything, I would go ahead and maybe chop those up a little bit and just put them in a super stew. There's nothing wrong with doing that either. I've had some people who are worried about if you freeze the mushrooms, like, does it do anything weird? And I don't find it does. Now, obviously, any vegetables that you're going to freeze, you're not going to just pull out and put on a salad. They're going to be for cooking only. But I always cook my mushrooms anyhow. And so let's see. Ah, and someone else is making pepperoni mushrooms, which is awesome. That is using my pepperoni spice blend. So again, like we were talking about spice blends and different things like that, it's you can use them in so many different ways. So I have a steel cut oat recipe where you can make pepperoni crumbles or sausage crumbles, like for pizzas or salads or things like that. And instead of using it on that medium, they used it on mushrooms. So there's so many ways to do things. It's really quite amazing. Someone's saying, how long do I leave the mushrooms in? I've left them quite long. I've left them for several months without a problem. So as long as they're not getting wet. See, these are just so huge, these shiitake mushrooms. Usually all I do is this for the shiitake mushrooms, and I'm debating, do I want to cut those down a little more now or later? And maybe, maybe it'll be later. Let's see. I'm going to still turn this down a little bit. There we go. The white balance is just really funky. Good morning. But I think you can leave them in there for quite some time. I mean, I do several months. And usually what I'll do is I'll have several kinds in there too. If I get portobello mushrooms, a lot of times those stems, if they're longer, I go ahead and I dehydrate. If I am, and then I will often either coarsely chop the tops of those, and then I'll throw them in anywhere that I kind of want a meatier flavor, or if I want to enhance some jarred or canned pasta sauce, because it really adds an amazing flavor. I love mushrooms. Mushrooms are also great. Then you can grab a handful for your stir fry out of there. So if I put them in like this in the bag, they may freeze together. So, and then what I would do is just take it and knock it against the counter and they'll come apart. As long as they don't get a lot of moisture or really get a lot of ice in the freezer, you're doing quite well. Trying to think. Another thing you can do if you have more patience than I do, which is probably the case, is we can also take these mushrooms and lay them out on a sheet pan. And if it's cold, in a single sheet. You could also put parchment paper on there if you wanted to. If it's cold outside, you could put it outside. It's not that cold where I live. Let them freeze, then put them in a bag. So you're kind of pre-freezing them so they don't stick together as much. Or if you can put your whole cookie sheet or a small cookie sheet into your freezer, you can do that. Then package it up in a bag. I don't really have much problem with them sticking together to a ridiculous it doesn't ruin anything if they're not perfect. And like these are big. So I usually with shiitakes, I don't do anything else with them, but I may do something special with these. But you could still use, just because it's a shiitake mushroom doesn't mean it only can be used in Asian food, or if it's a portobello mushroom, you can only use it in Italian food, right? So we can use our mushrooms however we want and make a multi-mushroom soup or all kinds of things like that. I'm sorry if the video's cutting in and out. I'm not sure what may be happening. I am definitely plugged into the router, so it could just be something going on. So I apologize if that's on my side. Is anybody else knowing that or noticing that? So some great mushroom recipes on plant-based-instantpot.com. I've got the Instantpot dirty rice that uses a lot of mushrooms. And we saw earlier another viewer who was basically doubling up the mushrooms, because you can. If you hate onions, leave them out. Love onions, double them up. And that's one of the things we talk about a lot. I talk about a lot in my lives, recipes, and classes, is that really, this is your food. It should taste the way you like it. I'm pretty sure my friend Helene is not in on this chop and chat because she hates mushrooms. And there's nothing wrong with going ahead and excluding some things or including some things, or, I'm always kind of like, can you just try it one more time, or try it this way, or try it another way, and see how that's working out. Okay, awesome. So it does look, I'm getting some feedback. So it does look like the chopping coming in and out, the coming in and out is on the other person's side. But you know, the internet is an interesting thing these days because everybody's on it all day long. So let's get back to some good mushroom recipes. So, and actually on Plant-Based Instant Pot, I have a couple of good ones. So we've got the dirty rice, which is like a Cajun rice. So the mushrooms are replacing the meat, the actual meat that kind of makes it look brown or dirty, and it has some spices in it. It's really good, served with some red beans. And I've got that super easy red beans recipe that's just from kidney beans, canned kidney beans, or about 3 cups of pre-cooked kidney beans if you cook your own from dry. So that would be a lovely meal to have tonight. One of my favorite mushroom recipes is also on plantbasedinstantpot.com, and that's my mushroom gumbo. All the recipes aren't Cajun. We just seem to be talking Cajun today. But it's kind of fun because we make a roux, but we make an oil-free roux using oat flour. So it's kind of cool because you're just toasting it. And my friend Marilyn, who I don't think is on here, I don't think I've seen her say hello, she makes an oil-free roux toasting oat flour, but she puts it in her oven on a sheet pan at a lower heat to get it to go up to that darker color. So she gets hers as dark as a copper penny. She sent me a picture. It's beautiful. So a roux is both to thicken and to add flavor. So like if you're making roux for a gravy or something like that, and traditionally, you know, we're toasting something and then we're adding an oil, and that kind of holds everything together. But in an oil-free roux, it still will thicken. And if you're cooking it slowly and kind of lightly toasting that flour over a period of time, it develops these really unique and deep flavors that are amazing and really add flavor to your food, especially something like a gumbo. Hi, Diane. It's awesome to see you. So that's something to kind of think too. And when you're making something like a roux, you have to really like be paying attention. Marilyn has it down in the oven, so you don't have to pay attention so much. When you see me make one, I'm always doing that, and I'm smelling the flour a lot because we're just toasting flour in a pan, basically. And one reason to do that smell test is you can smell like kind of the raw oats. The second time you go into smell, you smell slightly toasted oats. The third time you smell a more complex flavor and aroma that you're not expecting. And also, if you keep smelling it like that, you can catch it before it burns, because the hardest thing about doing a roux is getting it darker without burning it, because once it's burnt, you have to throw it out and start all over again. So another trick, when you're using an oat flour, it's not white like a all-purpose refined flour. So sometimes I'll just keep it in like a little dish like this, a little bit of the regular oat flour. And then as I'm doing it, because it's hard to tell the shades of oatmeal for real, but if you put that there, then you can see, oh look, it is 4 or 5 shades darker. And that's another good way to kind of just check in on things and see how it is. But I think my recommendation, if you don't know what you're making for dinner, gumbo is a good thing to make. You need some okra, and you can get some frozen okra most places. I live in the South, so of course I can get frozen okra and black-eyed peas and things like that. So if you can't find that as easily, you could, instead of the okra, use something like tofu or soy curls. So that could be something else you could do, or add extra mushrooms. Oh, that's a great question, Marcy. So Marcy's saying, how do you know if mushrooms have gone too far to freeze or to use? Okay, so the first thing would be they wouldn't feel dry. So let's see if you can see this from here. Okay, so right here, I'm feeling for moisture. I can feel a tad moisture here, but it's not wet. It doesn't feel wet. See how none of the colors are darkened? Like that's just a little piece of dirt, but like right there, let me break this open. Another thing you can do, if you break it open and you see all this fluffy inside, that is also good. So it's in a really good quality. If it looks like it's kind of wet and smushed down too much and it's starting to not be this beautiful light color, if you're working with a shiitake mushroom, I mean, that can change. So if you would look at those mushrooms and go, those look a little old, don't freeze those. If you look at them and you're like, those are fluffy goodness, that's when you'd freeze them. So my goal is always when I buy the mushrooms to freeze them within a day. I don't always meet that goal, but I do make sure I freeze them in like 3 days, because like today, this week has been really crazy. I have 3 other sets of mushrooms to deal with, and I'm not going to do them today. But that's how you would tell. And if I'm trying to see, let me look in here and see if any of these guys are giving us any reasons. I'll show you the mushrooms I got. This will also tell you a little bit maybe about picking out mushrooms. Okay. Now these are the beautiful oyster mushrooms that I got. And let me let you see these up close. Okay, so if we're looking, and we're almost always looking through some cellophane at mushrooms. So you can kind of touch them. They're firm. They don't smush. They do give a little bit, but they're not smushing. Here, we can open this. Another thing I usually do is I open it up, and then we can look underneath. Now, oyster mushrooms are one of the first ones that they start to get wet under where their gills are. This is not overly damp. And so that's something I look for oyster mushrooms. And they tend to go bad or start to lose their freshness. They're still edible. But so that's the first thing I'm going to do is look around in here. And those all look beautiful. And in fact, I wanted to share with you too, this amount of oyster mushrooms at the Asia market costs less than $5. And that's not a normal thing. Hey, Amber, it's awesome to have you join us. So, and this part is still white. It feels very firm to the touch. It doesn't feel slimy. Slimy mushrooms would be like an absolute no. Okay, so that's how we're going to look at these. These are the button mushrooms I got. And these are all, can be a little harder because sometimes the colors are not all perfectly white like they are at Trader Joe's or some places like that. So I'm trying to see, you can sort of see a little glistening. So I see there's a little bit of wet there, but it's not anything that's affected the mushroom. It's still nice and intact. Also, with a button mushroom, it's going to kind of start falling in on itself a little bit more. This is truly a bruise, but you're going to see lots of spots like that that are going to look not as good. I'm trying to see if we've got any ones in here right now. But you just want to make sure. I think the best thing is that they are mostly dry, not slimy, and firm to the touch. And see, with these, I'm not gonna and actually we can keep talking. I still got some time. So these I'm not going to take the stems off. I'm just going to go ahead and chop them as they are. So we can clean some of these. And then usually I don't freeze the oyster mushrooms because they're kind of like my special prize that I'll make something with them. So I might make with this, I haven't decided. I just knew, I saw them and I've been craving mushrooms like crazy. I could cut them into pieces. We could also, someone mentioned air fryers before, we could coat this and air fry it and make like a little poor boy out of it. We could saute them up with a little bit of tamari, some ginger, some garlic, maybe make kind of a stir fry kind of dish. You could also slice them and put them in a Thai curry. There's just so many things you can do. I love making a mushroom stew with multiple kinds of mushrooms. And what I used to do is get at the grocery store, they usually have the kind of the fancy mushroom 3-pack, and it's usually shiitake, oyster, I can't remember what else because I haven't gotten them in a while. And I would get 2 of those and make a really nice soup with it, with some rosemary, a little bit of balsamic vinegar, and it's just delicious. I was thinking with the shiitake mushrooms that I might make a hot and sour soup, and I have a slow cooker recipe for that over on healthyslowcooking.com. There's also a mushroom congee. That's a slow cooker mushroom congee on plant-based Instantpot. You can make it in your regular Instantpot or the Instantpot, or you can make it in your regular slow cooker or on the slow cooker setting in your Instantpot. And it's really warming and yummy and things like that. Yeah, and someone else saying great ideas for immune support. Yay, Joanne is here. We chopped up some mushrooms already without you. Oh, and Amber, no reason to forgive. We have not talked about hen in the woods. I do order hen in the woods mushrooms sometimes. I don't usually see them out and about. I'm in North Carolina, so if you're in the Pacific Northwest, I think that you see more of the exotic mushrooms more often out in the wild or in a grocery store. Excuse me, I'm going to take a drink. But I do order them sometimes from Misfit Market or some other services. So hen in the woods makes a really good chicken substitute. And in fact, this can make a really good chicken substitute too, because it's going to give you some of that toothsomeness. It also brings a lot of umami flavor. So hen in the woods, you can do like chicken fried steak. You can cut them and fry them up. You can also bread them if you want to. There's so many things you can do with mushrooms, like king mushrooms. And I don't think I have any king mushrooms, but they're mostly stem. And you can cut those and make those into vegan scallops and things like that. I've also taken the king mushrooms and shredded it with forks and made like barbecue, just like you would with soy curls or shredded sweet potatoes or something like that. So there's so many things you could do. My takis are awesome. Yeah, hot and sour soup is great too. And actually, I feel like I'm not doing enough chopping in this chat, is how I'm feeling. But let me, before I go over there, there's so many things you can do. I don't have any recipes particularly for hen in the woods. I tend to treat it more like a chicken fried steak because it's a treat. I don't have a source for them where I get them cheaper. So I do kind of use them as more of a premium product. Whereas if I found them, and maybe I will, maybe I'm just not going at the right time at the Asian market, I would be more likely to stock up and kind of freeze and bulk buy. Let's see. And Amber said she's in Michigan and found a produce distributor that she can get hen in the woods and all different kinds by the case. That's awesome. Congratulations on that, because that's amazing. And what I'm going to be doing with this, and we'll get back to the other conversation, is I'm just going to start slicing these kind of thinly and put them over here so that I can start to dehydrate them. And this is what I cut off. Actually, I may cut these in half. I don't usually do that. Then I'll spread them out a little bit more. So whenever I have any stems that are kind of big, it's got a little bit more dirt on it, then it's going to come off. I go ahead and dehydrate them. And I just dehydrate them in kind of the stems. You could go ahead and cut it smaller. Since I'm using this kind of cut helps me not lose all of it through the screen. And then if this may be enough for me to make a small batch of mushroom powder, but I just made a batch, so I might just keep it in a sealed container after they're dehydrated. I can keep adding to that for several months and then go ahead and powder them when I'm ready. You can use one kind or multiple kinds or things like that. Yep, and Joanne says she gets king mushrooms for about $4.99 a package and uses them as scallops. And at the Asian market, sometimes they have them on sale and they'll be like $1 for 2 of them or something like that. Now, I've never dehydrated them yet, but maybe that's in my future. Okay, and yeah, Amber, will you share your distributor? There's someone else in Michigan that wants to know, and because yeah, that amount of mushrooms is amazing. I know that they must be having them because at different produce distributors, because I do notice them more at places like Fiction Kitchen has been doing some more maitake dishes, and they also, oh, they had a really good crab dip that they were making with mushrooms that was pretty good over the holidays. And if you guys are in the Triangle area, the Raleigh-Durham area, I highly suggest, or when the world opens up and you're here visiting, hopefully to visit me, that you guys can go eat there because it's amazing. And if you are in the Triangle or just driving through, they do take out stuff right now. But they always have really good farmers market specials, and Caroline is an amazing chef. Oh, and Joanne, tell us, so Joanne says when they're marinated, talking about king mushrooms, you wouldn't know they weren't from the sea. So Joanne, will you share your marinade with us? Would you mind doing that? And I'll read it out loud to everybody, because that would be great. That would be awesome. And also, Amber, I'll go ahead and put up the distributor too, if you and share that with everybody, if you can share that with me. It's funny because when I'm chopping and chatting, I can't look straight at you guys all the time, so I feel a little naughty about that. But I think it would save all of our sanity for me not to cut my finger off during this exciting time. Ooh, actually, here's a good. Okay, I think I may have found a good example too about when it can be frozen. So this is just the bottom part. But if you notice that they're starting to get a little darker and a little wetter. This is from a different part of a stem, but it could equally have been from two mushrooms, that one was okay to freeze and one maybe I wouldn't normally freeze. But let's see, here we go. And someone else says, do I use the powder as a spice? I do use this powder as a seasoning, meaning that I use it to bring some umami flavor to some of my dishes. Also, if it's something like a stir fry or a soup. And actually, I even have been putting some into like my pasta sauces, because it does add kind of that beefy darkness without kind of adding, you know, some sort of weird chemical blend of bouillon or something like that. There are bouillons that are perfectly fine to use too. So don't hear that as I'm telling you can't use bouillon. But I also find making your own mushroom powder like this is much cheaper. So I paid $8 for mushrooms, and I'm probably gonna get $3 or $4 worth of powder and, you know, several recipes worth of mushrooms just from that. And these are going to be in the freezer, so they're not going to go bad. And so let's see what else we've got. Hey, Sensible Crime, it's awesome to see you. And Cheap Lazy Vegan does a lot with king mushrooms, she's saying, so we should take a look there for sure. I've done some things, I just haven't done a lot. The thing that I do the most is make that shredded barbecue. And it's really nice, and the mushrooms do add a nice umami quality to that. And okay, someone else said they dehydrated mushrooms and processed them to powder. They ended up a little moldy, even though they seemed perfectly dry. Any suggestions for keeping them free, flowy, and not clumpy? Yes, and I'm going to take a leap and assume that you live in a humid climate like I do. North Carolina is a humid climate, which means if I air fry some kale chips and I leave them out for 20 minutes on most days, they are no longer chips. They soak up that air. So one of the things, you want to make sure you're putting it in a very much an airtight container. The other thing is, if you take any kind of vitamins, and let me see if in my vitamins, do I have one that's right here? think there's one in here. Yeah. So sometimes they're in little packets like this. So I just got this out of my vitamin jar. And it's always the things that say, don't eat this, right? And I save these little packets. And sometimes they're little plastic things too. And then I'll stick that in with like mushroom powder that I've dehydrated or tomato powder, some spice blends, especially if a spice blend had some sugar or something that was slightly wet in it. So that's one thing. You people who are in drier climates probably don't have that issue. So see, I'm just spreading these out. What I'll do is I'll come over here, trade this out, and they'll probably even be dehydrated by tonight. I'm just going to put this to dehydrate. And there you go. And I had done this with some smaller things of mushrooms, so I had saved up for quite some time. Okay. If you may not see all the comments where you are, person who's asking, and so that's why I'm kind of reading the comments, is because this is actually not a live just in one place. So I'm going live in several groups, several pages, YouTube. So I'm seeing the comments from all the places, and if you're the only person watching where you are, you will not see those. Okay, I'm going to get these off of here. We're just going to chop these guys up. So again, I'm just got a damp paper towel that I'm just kind of getting any dirt off of. That's all. So how long does the oh, here, let me put this up too. So this is the Michigan producer that has the Shiitake mushrooms and other mushrooms you can get by the case. So if that's local for you, please support them. Now, I will also say there's some local mushroom producers near me, and I think we're finding that a little bit more, is that maybe not where you are. When I was in Portland a few years ago, or the West Coast, Pacific Northwest, there were mushrooms I had never seen before dried at the market. Like, it was crazy. Crazy awesome, but crazy. So I'm going to leave that up there for a little while so you guys can see. And Joanne, if you share your recipe, I'll put that up there too. Yep, and somebody else adds the desiccant packet. And oh, it's Jackie in Texas. Yeah, so Texas can be that way too. And thank you, Sensible Crime, for the thumbs up. I appreciate you as always. Let's see. Okay, awesome. And I'm sorry that I'm calling you Facebook user and you're alone and can't see the comments. That's so unfair on all the points. It's, I put it all the different places, so in hopes that wherever it's easiest for you to watch, you're watching. That's my goal. If that's what's really happening, I don't know. And see, oh, here's one. Here's a mushroom I'm not going to freeze. So let's look at that. Okay, let's look at that versus this. So this stem is kind of dark, doesn't look so good. See, look how it just doesn't look as good. See, now I feel like we need more light. Let's try this. Yeah, that's a little bit better. That's too much. It's not letting me do just right. Okay. And so it just doesn't look good. It looks darker. Like, the cap is pretty good. It's not that I couldn't use this in cooking right now, though I probably could go ahead and just take the stem out and use the cap in what we're doing now. But again, this is just me being nitpicky. And in general, when you're doing something fresh, and to freeze, you do want it to be the best product that you can get. And that's why I suggest that you do it as soon as you can. That's really the bottom line on that. Aw, thank you so much. Let's see, here we go. Okay, and Joanne is going to put for that king mushrooms that she uses as scallops. If you guys aren't already on the Facebook group, Vegan Recipes, Cooking with Kathy Hester, it's free. Just go on over and join up. Joanne and a lot of other cool, awesome people are in the community. So if you have some questions, people will help you. I love it. And you can be plant-based, you can be vegan, you can be Meatless Monday. We only talk about vegan recipes there, but that doesn't mean we expect you to be where everybody is. You get to be where you are. Imagine that in this world right now. So, and I'm very adamant about that. So if people start getting a little like you should, we have to have a little powwow. But that's only happened 2 or 3 times over several years. So I think it's a great place, and Joanna's going to put that there. Ah, okay, and you think it's one of Julie's recipes. So Julie Hassan, you can go and look at her recipes at Julie's Kitchenette. I love me some Julie. So I do highly recommend her recipes. And my bean cheese, sliceable bean cheese, is a variation of her sliceable cashew cheese. And we're also friends in real life. So she's also a super cool person. So let's see what else we've got. Ooh, an applesauce mushroom grow kit. And you know, my friend Mia, who is Howard Jacobson's wife, and see, this one has some weird mold in it. I don't know if you'll see this or not, but we'll try. Can you kind of see that there's weird? So I'm just going to let that one go. It's probably okay, but that's just, I kind of err on the side of caution with some of that stuff. So anyhow, so these grow kits, so they did a oyster mushroom grow kit, and they got this big, beautiful, I don't know what you call it, herd of mushrooms, whatever a herd of mushrooms is. And they were delightful, just beautiful. So I've been wanting a grow kit ever since then. But Mia also goes to the same market and buys mushrooms. Aw, and Sensible Crime says it's like visiting me in my kitchen. You are visiting me in my kitchen. And I washed my hair yesterday. I'm showered up. This is as visit ready as I get these days. Yeah, and that's a really good point too. Because I know a lot of you are going to less stores, and I commend that, because right now is, you know, it's a hard time in the pandemic because we're all tired of being inside and not doing things. And because people are tired, they're not really being as safe out in the world some places, like where we are. And I felt very safe in my Asian market. Also, depending on which one you go to, I'm sure if I went to H Mart down in Cary, that it will be a little more crowded. Durham's market is a little smaller, but it's still a big market. It's still a big building. I usually go in the mornings during the week. Almost nobody's there, and all the employees are gloved and masked all the time. So that does make me personally feel better. And so that's the thing. If you feel uncomfortable, you might be able to find a place that you can source it. So like, there are a couple of mushroom suppliers. Oops, there we go. Trying to make you go back. There we go. And there's some great stuff, like it's a great place to get ginger. It's a great place to get things like lime leaves and lemongrass and stuff for Thai food, and basil and Thai basil and mint and fresh turmeric that doesn't cost $80 bazillion. And so I came home with a mushroom haul. And if you guys want to watch, again, I talked about my haul on Instagram story, IGTV, and it's Kathy Hester Cooks. But I spent $30. I got all these mushrooms and other stuff too. Like, I got a lot of stuff for that $30. I do find that we're trying to go to like our local Harris Teeter less, and we are more likely to use Instacart to get stuff from like Publix or Whole Foods. You can order directly on Amazon. We're lucky enough that even though we live in the suburbs, that we're close enough for a delivery. So it's a little bit about thinking, where are you feeling safe? And I would recommend that you guys try not to go to the grocery store at prime time, like at dinner time or on the weekends, because it's been crazy. And there's not much they can do. It's just too many people in the store. So what do you guys like to make with mushrooms? Tell me. Tell me what you're going to make with your mushrooms after you chop them up. One of the beauties about going ahead and getting a bunch of mushrooms and freezing them like this is feeling like you don't have anything in the house, and then realizing you can grab some of these mushrooms and just throw them in. And again, one of the things I like to do sometimes when I'm being lazy is like an enhanced tomato sauce. So it could be a jar of your favorite sauce, or it could even be cans of crushed tomatoes with basil, or plain crushed tomatoes. So I go ahead and saute some onions and some garlic and mushrooms, bell pepper. And at that point, if I want it to be kind of super chunky, if I had these and these were sauteing, I just take my spatula and start crunching them up into small pieces. So it starts looking a little bit like a ground meat sauce. And you know, if I have some eggplant, I'll cut up some eggplant in small cubes and put that in there. It's so good. And what I'll do too, so I try to get all the air out. I'll show this overhead, see if we can see it very well. And then I try to even the bag out a little bit. This will help for a couple of reasons. This will help you with storage because it's flatter, so you can store a lot on top of that. It also helps if you wanted to break off a piece. It's not going to all be clumped up together in a way that you can't get to any of it. So that's kind of awesome. We'll do that the same with the shiitake mushrooms. Oh, I love that. So let's see what we got here. Joanne has got her Rancho Gordo box. I have mine over here. I was thinking about unboxing that today, but I was like, I need to chop mushrooms. Maybe we'll unbox Rancho Gordo in the beginning of the week. But I know, Joanne, you're going to peek before then, so don't try to hold off. It's okay. And Gina, it is awesome to have you here. It does not matter if you come late or early. You are always welcome. And Sensible Crime adds mushrooms to Asian soups. Oh, yeah. Or just to, sometimes I start with onions and mushrooms and it becomes an Asian soup, because it's like there's something wonderful about the cold weather and mushrooms, and they are supposed to be really good for your immune system. I don't have any big facts on that, and seeing that I'm a recipe developer, not a doctor, I don't talk a whole lot about it. But I can tell you, my body is all craving all the mushrooms right now. It seems like I cannot get enough. So they're good for me. My body wants them. That's kind of a no-brainer to me. Ooh, mushroom korma. You're speaking my language. I think that's my love language, is Indian food. And I love a good korma, but I've never had a mushroom korma. I've had like a mushroom potato dish that has been incredibly lovely that I eat quite often. But yeah, anything Indian food. I love Indian stews and the flavors, and you know, I think the little kid part of me, and see how you can just pile these right up on top. So even if you just have an above your fridge freezer, you can stack a lot of bags like this. And don't forget too, you can do things like chop your onions ahead of time, chop your bell peppers ahead of time. Just like the mushrooms, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to blanch them or anything like that. Obviously, you only use them when you're cooking though. But yeah, Amber, do you have a recipe for mushroom korma that you can share with us? Aw, you guys are so awesome. Whenever I go, oh, I don't want to go live, I think, oh, those people are so awesome. I want to hang out with them. So that's why I do these, so we can all hang out. Okay, and Gina finally made something tasty. Let's see. Onions, mushrooms, carrots, onion, garlic, and curry powder. Yum. That does sound really good. I love that. And Joanne says her husband will eat anything she puts mushrooms in. And that's awesome too. Well, I think, do you guys have any other questions? So like literally, I'm going to put these in the freezer, and then when I pull it out, I'll just take out whatever I need. And depending on my mood, I might be like, gotta make a big Asian soup, taking it all, or I might just take a handful for a stir fry. And because there's nothing sadder than buying some mushrooms and then looking in your fridge and they're like, oh, they're bad. So going to the Asian market and spending more than a couple of dollars on mushrooms makes me go ahead and prep them. And I don't know if that will do that for you, but there is so much beauty in this. And a long time ago, Whole Foods used to have frozen mushrooms, frozen sliced mushrooms. And that's how I realized you could freeze mushrooms, because I had never seen them before. And I've done this so many times, and I've gotten portobello caps on sale. A lot of times they'll be on sale at a grocery store. You could go ahead and get, 8. Chop them up really small. If you don't feel like chopping or your wrists are having some issues, go ahead and do it in a food processor. I will even take those frozen bigger mushroom chunks, throw it into like my mini food processor to make ground meat with it, or ground whatever, and put it in anything that I would put like Beyond Meat or jarred and ground, or an older recipe that actually called for ground meat. It adds that same dark flavor that like a red meat would kind of add, so you get that added. But it does have, especially portobellos, when the tops are chopped really well, they have a nice chew to them, and they really add a lot of hearty texture as well as flavor to your dishes. We knew you added greens, Gina. I imagine, Gina, that you were like me, and I'm always like doing something, I'm like, I could add a handful of greens to that. So I end up doing that to soups, stews, stir fries all the time. I'm like taking some kale or some greens or some collards, Swiss chard. That now I have Cheryl eating greens. It used to be that she was like, I don't really like it. So I just started chopping it up tiny, like parsley tiny, and sprinkling on top of things and adding it more and more and more. And now I can make full-on greens. It's amazing. Oh, does Trader Joe's have frozen mushrooms now? I just have not been going. I go there every few months when we can, because ours is just super crazy busy. But I'll have to check that out. If it's the mushrooms that I'm thinking about, they may have oil or butter in them. If it's the ones I think about, they do have oil. I can't remember if it's oil or butter. So just read the package, and if you use oil, they're perfect for you. It's just, if you don't use oil, make sure that that's one thing you need to check the ingredients for. And sometimes they'll have salt in frozen ones, and this is just mushrooms that I cut up, so I like that too. And Sensible Crime saying, if you have hand problems, thinking about chopping veg with scissors. Yeah, and you can tear oyster mushrooms with your fingers. That's a great point. Depending on how much cooking and computer work I'm doing, sometimes my wrists get really fatigued. I'm lucky that they're still working pretty good, but there's no shame in buying things already cut up if you need to. That's why they exist. Or to trying to do some things with scissors or different things. So never see one way that I'm doing something and imagine that I would tell you to never do it any other way. Because if you've watched me for very long at all, you know I'm all about the options. I'm all about including all of us, because we all can eat delicious food. If you can't eat mushrooms because you're allergic to them, I do not want you to eat them, right? But if you're just not sure what to do with them, that's why we're here today. Yeah, and that's totally okay, Joanne. I was not trying to call you out. I was like, I remember there being some beautiful sauteed mushrooms that I wanted, and I can't remember if I got them or not, which is why I can't remember if they had butter in them or not. I have another drink. so dry. So Amber gave us a good mushroom korma recipe, so I'm putting it up. Onions, garlic, tomatoes. I'm assuming that's half teaspoon garam masala, quarter teaspoon turmeric, red chili powder to taste, which, as you know, in my house with Cheryl is almost none. On the side is what chili powder to taste is. On the side for Kathy. Paprika, cumin seeds, a quarter cup raw soaked raw cashews to ground. So she's making a cashew cream to make that beautiful, like a korma is a creamy sauce, like it's delicious creamy. I have seen some other people use some like coconut milk for that too. I don't know. I'm assuming that's not super traditional, but there is another, I believe there's another Indian stew that calls specifically for coconut milk that I can't think of right now. If anybody knows. And Deborah says a special hello to Gina. All right, you guys. All right. And so we've talked about this before, and I wonder if this is Jackie, because Jackie, I think you and I have talked about this. Doesn't freezing mushrooms cause moisture to exude when they are defrosted? I am always taking them straight out of here and putting them into the pan to saute them. So I am always sauteing them fairly dry anyhow, or there could be some water in the pan. So that's not a big concern for me. And what Sensible Crime is saying is you could always saute the mushrooms and then keep them to add to your food without contaminating the whole pot. You could also saute all these mushrooms and freeze them sauteed too. That's something else you could do if you want to. I don't find that they get super waterlogged or anything like that. But again, I'm using them to put in other dishes. So I'm rarely just making like sauteed mushrooms. But you could do it any way you want. And if you are particularly sensitive to that, then I would suggest that you probably go ahead and saute them first and then freeze them. You can do that with onions too. If you, a lot of my vegan slow cooker recipes call for sauteed onions, and people are like, I'm not sauteing onions and put them in my slow cooker. Well, you don't have to. If you put them in raw, it's not going to taste as good. So now what you can't do is complain you don't want to saute onions and then complain that anything in your slow cooker tastes the same and it doesn't, you know. Some of that could be because you're not doing some of these things, but you can always use onion powder instead of sauteing onions, right? We're still getting some onion flavor. Same thing, if you're very particular about your mushrooms, but you want to have something set aside for emergencies, you could always dehydrate a whole thing of mushrooms and make mushroom powder and use it that way too. So there's, depending on what is important to you and what's going on, there's always a solution and a way that you can have something for later. And Amber says, I'm thinking of decreasing the cashews and using blended tofu or oats, any vegan cream or vegan yogurt. Yeah, I use a lot of vegan unsweetened plain vegan yogurt is awesome to make creamy Indian stews. And I am doing some stuff where I'm actually making oat creams instead of cashew creams for a lot of things. And that seems to be working really quite well. The texture is slightly different. So you're not going to have that fatty, wonderful mouthfeel that you get from cashews when you make an oat cream. You still get that round feeling and it's still luscious, but you know, it's not the same. Just as long as everybody knows what they're getting into, that's all I care about. Okay, guys, I'm probably going to have to go in a second because I'm going to be on Clubhouse. I'm doing a Clubhouse room with some people on video. But next week, I'm going to be doing a Clubhouse room with another vegan blogger, and we're going to talk about flavorful vegan food. So I'll try and push all that out, or maybe we'll do a live right before it so I can see if you guys want to come over to Clubhouse. If you don't know what Clubhouse is, it's an audio-only social media program that is right now Apple only. So on you have to have an iPhone or an iPad, and you have to have an invite or know some people who are in there. So you could go and download Clubhouse on your phone, sign up with your phone number. If you already have a lot of people who are there, you could just get pushed over. If not, you'll have to wait for somebody to invite you, and they need your phone number to invite you. So if you're interested in Clubhouse, and I know you, message me on Facebook, but you have to give me your phone number. That's the only way I can invite you if I have some invites. Okay, and you can always microwave things like onion in a little broth. Yep, that's true too. And see, here's the thing, there's so many ways you can do everything. And I know a lot of people aren't keen on that, but oh, yep, I did not mention that yet, Gina, but you can get dried mushrooms straight from Costco and ground those into a powder. I've gotten them cheap before and then not so cheap. So also, if you get mushrooms that are already dried, you might want to go ahead and put them in your dehydrator or in your oven for a low heat because they might have retained a little bit of moisture. The first time I did it, I broke a coffee grinder. So because it wasn't quite crispy enough. So go and see how crispy they are before you make the powder for sure. Yeah. Oat cream's kind of awesome. I've been doing some more oat experiments. I did the outrageous oatmeals and now I'm kind of falling in love with oats all over again. Oh, thank you. Oh yeah, onion cream. So we made onion cream and you can see that over on YouTube channel. I think there's a Facebook video about it as well. So I actually roast an onion. It's very sweet, and then you puree it. You can add a little lemon juice and use it instead of sour cream as an SOS sour cream substitute, or that could also probably work really well in the korma, honestly. Let's see. Okay, so Gina, if you want to, you can email me at kathyhester@gmail.com and just make the subject, can you please invite me to Clubhouse or something like that. And because I know I have a few invites and my wife has a couple of invites. On onion cream, this apple does not have apple, I know. And I'm sorry, it's just because it's a new social platform and that's kind of the way it is, you know, with some stuff like that. So it's not meant to exclude you guys at all. Eventually it'll open up. What some people are doing are getting an older iPhone or iPad, like a cheap one, because all you need to be able to do is hook it up to your Wi-Fi. And it's an audio only platform, so it's kind of like in between going to a conference and listening to interactive podcasts or something like that. There were some good rooms this morning about some vegan stuff, so I think it's kind of happening. And hey, Harry, you are coming here right at the end. So what we did is we cut up some mushrooms that we're going to freeze. And we talked about some mushroom dishes. And wherever you're watching this on Facebook, it should come back as a replay in a few minutes and you can watch the rest. If you have some questions and you're watching the replay, please just put them in the comments. And hopefully, fingers crossed, Facebook will show them to me and I will answer them. If not, you can always email me at kathyhester@gmail.com. And okay, awesome guys. Have an amazing weekend. And don't forget, you can join me still for my class tomorrow where we're making a mezz platter. We're going to do hummus and like a roasted red pepper walnut spread and all kinds of goodness. You can go over to kathyhester.podia, podia.com to join in. It would make me so happy to see you there. It's all I have to say. Okay, and Harry, you have a especially wonderful night, and just give it a couple minutes. The replay will be up, and you will be as the know as we all are. Okay, be kind to yourself and at least one other person.